Are you listening? Damn.
I'm Patrice, everyone. This is my preferred lender, Jean. And today we're going to talk to you about relationships in real estate and how you should start off with looking at your relationship with yourself. So, Jean, why do you think it's important to look at people's personal relationship with, money, finances, things like that before they get started?
It's important that you identify with yourself first, right? Because sometimes we're not true to our true inner person, and we want things that may not really be factual. So if you're true to yourself and you realize and you know who you are, then you can assess that in a certain way. And I think it starts with that first. So if you know that you're not someone that has all the financial capabilities, maybe not, you don't have all the money, you need to get a pre-approved to identify. Do you need a low down payment loan? Do you need a 20%? Can you do a 20% down? Do you need to get a grant? Because Patrice, the realtor, needs to get you like a seller's concession to kind of bridge that gap. So knowing yourself is reason why a lot of agents will say, we're not going to take you out until you get a pre-approval, because you need to identify that piece of the process first. So understanding what your buying power is and your capabilities as a person, and knowing that each person is different. You may have a buyer who makes $50,000 who may qualify more than the next person, because there's different things that kind of go into whether or not that person can kind of get financing. So understanding the whole totality of that whole entire process will kind of help you get to that next level of home ownership.
Right. And that's important too, because knowing what you have to work with within yourself as far as finances go, then you can understand what your true expectations are.
Absolutely.
As far as the property, where you can look, what you can look for, how much you can look to spend, and you won't really have a good, grasp on that until you take a look at yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So the first thing I think people need to do is the basics, like their own personal information. When you look at a credit report, what's the very first thing that you look at that could be like a red flag, let's say?
Well, I look at the credit score first and foremost. I see there's certain products with FHA, you need to have somewhere around a 600 FICO. So I'm going to look at that.
Okay.
Then I'm going to look at your credit to see if there's any bankruptcies, any foreclosures, any collection accounts, anything that's going to automatically stand out at me. I'm also looking for the credit to see if there's anything as far as child support, arrear payments that may be added to the debt to income calculation. So I'm looking at that. If nothing like that stands in, then we look at the minimum monthly payment. Another misconception is that buyers think that we look at the amount that they owe. Gene, I have a $30,000 loan I can't buy, and my income is $50,000, which is not the facts. We look at what your minimum payment is. You may have a $30,000 loan, but your minimum payment is only $100. This is what we add to the debt to income ratio. So you don't need a 740 to buy. You can start as low as 600. Now, if you have a 600, it does put you in a different bracket as to which type of loan product you can do. And that's when we go a little bit deeper to determine which one is going to be better for you.
Right. And I think, like you mentioned, that's important, because some people, they'll say, well, I make $80,000 and I have a, 700 credit score, but my sister, she only makes $50,000 and she has a 650 credit score. How come she can buy more than me? It's just not the surface. It's just not, score and income. It's like the other things you mentioned, your outstanding balances, things like that.
Correct.
What else, as far as the makeup of credit goes, do you guys look at?
Well, the credit is one piece, but we also have to run these loans through something called a desktop underwriting. It's going to be standardized things that we need to consider. For example, conventional will say that you need a 620 FICO score. When you couple a 620 FICO score to low down payment and you want to do conventional, that buyer still may not be eligible for financing. So as the lender, my job is to make sure I run it through something called desktop underwriting.
DU.
DU, there you go. DU will allow me to determine when I pass it through the investors that this particular credit profile and the down payment and everything will match. Now, FHA is a lot easier to kind of get financing. So if I see someone has a 600 and there's nothing glaring at me, I know we have a good chance of getting that loan approved. But conventional, just because you meet the 620 and you're below a 50% debt to income ratio, does not mean that you'll be able to get financing. And a lot of times what happens with a lot of failed transactions is because some lenders will automatically issue a pre-approval just because they have a 620 FICO. So now what happens, right? You take the buyer out. The buyer's happy that they now have a pre-approval on hand, put an offer in. Their money's now in jeopardy because their financing may not really go through. And they're buying a condo because condos are more difficult to switch back from conventional to FHA because, as we know, not all condominiums are FHA approved.
Right.
So,
and you don't want to have to go through a spot approval because that's
correct. That's another nightmare. So we try to make sure that, especially on my side, if I send someone a pre-approval, I make sure, especially on the conventional side, I've seen situations where someone has a 700 FICO and the DTI is only 38%. Now, you would think that's a strong buyer, but sometimes it's that one little thing that the DU, which is the desktop underwriter, will pick up that will say this person cannot buy. So if you don't do those due diligences, we don't do our homework, the whole transaction can't go anywhere.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important. I put a post up one time on one of my social media accounts, and I said, when the red flag thing was going on, I said, if you got an approval letter and you didn't provide any documents, any information to your lender, then you're not really approved.
Yeah.
Because all the other things, like you mentioned, you could have outstanding loans, you could have child support, alimony, all these other types of payments that aren't accounted for in, where your debt lies, and you get an approval issued and it's not factual because everything wasn't checked.
Yeah, the biggest problem is that, and it happens a lot, especially my buyers who are self-employed, who are 1099, they automatically assume that they make a lot, right? But on our end, for the purpose of lending purposes, we have to look at your AGI, which is your adjusted gross income. So if that adjusted gross income is the net income that you take home, or if a client does not report the income on their tax return,
after
you don't
all
pay
the
money to Uncle Sam, we can't use that income to qualify. So if I do a pre-qualification, you call me and say, hey, Gene, I made $140,000, and you, in your mind, you did really make $140 because that's your gross income. But when I look at your tax returns, I'm looking at the deductions, and the deductions say you only really claimed and paid taxes on $40,000. So that means that I only can qualify you for that. But there's other programs. But for that particular program, I can only give you credit for a $40,000 income.
And that's good that you brought that up because I've sold tons and tons of co-ops, and that's the biggest place where people don't realize how all their debt can go against them. These co-op boards, they have these 20% and 30% max DTIs, and once you start calculating everything that they owe, they're into the 40s and 50s and they won't qualify. But like you said, they think because they make six figures or they have this perfect credit score that they're golden.
Correct.
And they're really not.
Just in talking that co-op piece, it's just a different animal on its own. I do an extra layer of a check, and I make sure I talk to the agent to make sure, hey, are you sure that this is what the building wants? The last thing we want to do is have the client pay for money, do an inspection, pay for an appraisal, do a questionnaire, and all those fees, and then to find out that the board will not approve them. So co-ops are just are a mess. Even when you do everything right, something could still happen.
Exactly, because boards are picky. So if someone wants to do a financial self-check, where would they go? What's a good resource for them to use? Should they pull their own credit at Credit Karma? Or
well, you do have annualcreditreport.com. You have the option to pull your credit one time a year, and it's a soft inquiry report. I recommend that everyone should have an annual credit report done once a year, and also have actively on your phone Credit Karma to be able to actively monitor if anything new comes up on their credit. But utilize the professionals like myself. I don't charge money for my services. So if someone comes into me and they want to get their credit checked, I'll do it pro bono and tell them exactly what it is, what they need to do. My systems do allow me to kind of look at someone's credit, and in some instances, I can increase someone's credit in 3 days or maybe 5 days. Because understanding credit, right, the relationship between credit and financing kind of goes hand in hand, because if you understand the simple common sense of credit is, if you think that because it's money, it's not income, right? So the credit companies are looking at ratios. So you have a credit card that has a high balance of $5,000. Now you spent $4,000 of that $5,000. For the purpose of the credit card company, they're thinking that there's a form of hardship. Why has this particular buyer utilized so much of their outstanding balance? And when I look at that, my system's going to identify that. And I'll tell them, if you pay this $5,000 limit down to $1,000 or even lower, right? Because the goal is to keep it within a 20 to 30% ratio. So just doing that alone, it's going to help your scores go up.
Good. So most people, they say 30 days they do a rescore, but you're saying in a couple days you can have an
If
impact?
you do a rapid rescore, there's some stuff. So someone has a collection account, someone actually missed the late payment. We're not a credit repair company, but in a situation like that, when they just need to kind of pay down a credit card, they provide me the updated statement to the credit card. I can then send that directly to the credit agencies and force them or request for them to expedite it and update the credit report.
Great. That's great information to know, because sometimes people, they see things on their credit and they're like, oh, this is going to take forever to get fixed or, get changed. So knowing that it can be done, quickly, that's good for people to know. What about, let's say, people that have common names like Michael Ramirez, something like that? Why is it important for them to look at their credit report? Or even, I've had clients that are senior and junior.
Oh, man.
What are some
I had a situation. I'm not a junior, but my father is Gene P. Volsey, and I was, and I had it on my name as well. I had to add junior to my credit report because a lot of my father's collection accounts, not the medical accounts, were populating on my credit report. Once I added the junior, literally overnight, all those medical that he had kind of cleared my account. So the reason why a Credit Karma is important to constantly monitor, because whenever your credit is pulled, you automatically get a notification on your phone that something new happened or something new popped up. So if something new pops up, then you can go in and try to rectify it right away. And plus, if you make a late payment, you can see it that right there and you can dispute it. So you need to kind of monitor that credit, because credit is everything, right? You have no credit in this day and age, you really have nothing. So it's important that you stay on top of that credit as much as you can.
Good. So people that, they check their credit, they have the name situation squared away, they have their balances low. What about people that have had, some mishaps? You mentioned like medical collections, or what about bankruptcy, or even a past foreclosure? Maybe they co-signed something for someone else. How do you help them in those situations?
Well, there's programs for that, right? FHA will have a lower seasoning requirement for certain bankruptcies. After 2 years, most likely you can get financing. You do conventional, you're looking at 4 years out. So we look at that and we need to identify what the situation is. So sometimes the conventional, if you had a bankruptcy and it was financial mismanagement, then they're going to want you to wait the full term of the seasoning requirement. But if I can identify an extenuating circumstance, something that led outside of your control, that led to why, let's just say medical, you lost your job, a loss of income, and we can document that, then we can get the financing and reduce the time that you have to meet. So it depends on what that scenario is, kind of what you mentioned before. Someone making $80,000 may not qualify for the same thing with someone else. Every single scenario is going to be different, and we approach it that way to try to see which financing package is going to be better suited for each client.
And I try to explain that to people. You may have, the same income, same credit score, but your personal makeup is going to be different. Even at a job, if everyone's getting paid, the same amount of money, they're all really going to do the job differently. Absolutely. Some are going to be, very meticulous about, their work, and some are just going to collect the check and not monitor their work, not care about anything.
Correct.
So it's the same thing when it comes to, getting approved for a loan. Everybody's situation is different.
With that said, I had someone that said, hey, Gene, my friend down the street just got a rate of this. How come I'm getting this rate? Well, what is that person's credit score? What is that down payment? And where did the person buy? Was it a condo? Was it a single family? Was it multifamily? All these different variables play into how we determine what your interest rate is.
Good. So I think that's a great start to let people know their basic information that they need to know about credit. I think maybe next time we'll talk to them about money, a little bit more about money.
Money's important.
Yeah. How we account for it, go a little more into detail about income, sources, things like that, and give them some more tips.
Yeah, it's a lot of options, a lot of grant programs out there, a lot of ways to kind of get access to money. One of the things I hear is that I don't have the money and people don't know how to get money. It's things like seller's concession we can talk about, gift money, how to leverage your 401k, how to get grant loan programs. So trying to get our buyers to be ready and give them as much knowledge as possible is key.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in and listening to us, and stay tuned for our next discussion on real estate, relationships, and money. Patrice?
Gene Volsey.
Take care.
Peace.
Are you listening? Damn.